Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Do the Change podcast, where we're challenging and reimagining OEHS. In this podcast, we focus on highlighting upcoming leaders in their field and how they got to where they are today, with a special focus on the field of occupational environmental health, but we're also touching on other topics as well. So we're going to be talking about all the hills and valleys of their journeys, get some insight into some non-traditional paths into the field. So my name is Tara Parrish. I'm a recent graduate from the MPH program here at Cal. And our guest for this episode is Adenike Omomukuyo. Yes, close enough. I'm so sorry. So, okay. Just full transparency, I practiced, but
she did. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Adenike is a current third year master's in public health student at UC Berkeley School of Public Health. She's concentrating in maternal and child health nutrition. After graduating from Cornell with her BS in human biology, health, and society, she has spent the past 5 years working in public health nutrition, in the public health nutrition field as an anti-racist health policy innovator, implementation science researcher, and recovery coach. Her special areas of interest center on eating behaviors around socio-ecological stress and trauma, and food as medicine reformation. Sorry, y'all, my stutter is catching up with me right now. An aspiring pediatric dietitian, she aims to transform the nutrition care process of vulnerable BIPOC youth through a health equitable lens that constructs racially international models with treatment settings, offers language for strengths-based trauma-informed feeding approaches, and ultimately prioritizes community inclusivity, sustainability, and healing. So Adenike, welcome to our podcast, and thank you for sitting with me as I go through those words.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you for that. Oh my gosh. Thanks for that introduction. Goodness. It is such an honor to be here. Thank you for making the space. I think this is a really powerful thing to be doing as we uplift each other's voices. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you here. And we're going to jump into our first question, which is actually a checking question. So what was the last book that you read? What was it about? Who was it by? And if you could rate it out of 10, what would it be?
Yeah, so I love this question. I've actually this summer have been trying to get back into reading. I used to love reading, especially when I was younger, but life. But this summer, the last thing I read was Summer in the Bluffs. It's a nonfiction novel fiction novel, my bad, by Sunny Houston. And it's kind of just giving tea behind Black wealth and Black luxury in Oak Bluffs. And Oak Bluffs is one of the most exclusive Black beach communities in Martha's Vineyard, which is in the Northeast. So very juicy. I would probably give it a good 8 out of 10. Oh, yeah, cool. It's been nice of a summer read for sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I feel like that's timely because Martha's Vineyard is where people, or particularly Black people, go to during the summer. So that's very timely.
Yeah, for sure. I've also I've always wanted to go to, I guess I kind of wanted to go to Martha's Vineyard. I've never been able to for many reasons because it's expensive. So it felt like I was there just from reading the book. And then I think a lot of Black women also in this generation have been trying to lead into Black luxury in little but big ways. So I just love reading about it and just seeing the drama and the stories behind it. So recommend for sure.
Okay, I'll definitely check it out because I've been looking for new books, which is why I really like this question. So I think the last book that I read, I did finish this other book. So I'm into crime, novels, or actually mystery. So Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
So I just recently read this book. I think it's called A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Sounds crazy, but it's just about this girl where for her high school project, she decides to like investigate a town like murder. Essentially, she found out that the person who was accused of doing it was completely innocent, and she actually finds the actual person who did it. But it's like a class capstone project. So it was super cool because I really appreciated, one, the book also had images in it, so you can kind of follow along with her. But then she also typed like capstone entries. So you felt like
no way.
Felt like you were investigating with her, and it was super cool.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it was really good, an easy binge read. And that was actually the first book that I've read for fun since high school, because college made everything not fun anymore.
Talk about that. Talk about that.
So I think now I'm trying to venture like, okay, I got one. Now let me venture into different genres again. So,
that is so cool. Do you feel like, I'm curious, like what inspired you to want to pick a mystery-based novel?
Yeah, I feel like I'm always for like, even with movies, I enjoy movies and books where I'm kind of confused for like majority of the book. And then at the
Makes
end,
you think.
like, yeah, and everything's like makes sense. And like that just keeps my mind engaged, or I'm trying to figure out who did it, like, or who done it type of thing. And so I feel like I was thinking like, if I'm gonna start off with a new book, or like a new kind of refinding my love for books, why not do it? And why not find a genre that's close to what I love watching? So
yes,
I chose it. Yeah,
that is so exciting. I can't wait to hear what genre you explore next.
Yeah, I have the Michelle Obama books. Maybe Michelle. I don't know if Michelle's a genre, but Michelle Obama is the vibes.
We can make it a genre. She should honestly have her own genre.
Yeah, just Michelle.
Just Michelle. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna jump into the first official question of the podcast. So walk us through your journey into the field of nutrition. Was there any defining moments or experience kind of in your life that made you choose nutrition? Or do you feel like it was more like a collection of experiences and moments that pushed you into the field of nutrition?
Yeah. This is a great question. I think it helps me in the present after going through so much already in the space to have some like important reflection. I think I would say that my journey in the field was a collection of experiences and moments for sure. I think my first introduction into like food and foodscapes came from like birth. I am Nigerian American ethnically. So that just exposed me to a very unique plate of different kinds of rich spices and rich foods and just very traditional Nigerian dishes from childhood. I grew up mainly having Nigerian dishes, and then my parents are immigrants. And so in trying to assimilate to American culture, also having experiences of them trying to like Nigerianize or Americanize like American dishes. There's one thing my mom used to do was sometimes she tried to make us spaghetti, like traditional American style spaghetti, and she would make Nigerian stew, which if you've ever had Nigerian stew, it's extremely spicy. And so she's making this Nigerian stew to be the tomato sauce base for the spaghetti, and then she mixes it with the spaghetti. And so it's like you're supposed to be eating spaghetti like the American style, which is a lot more like palatable, not as like heat, you don't have as much heat in your mouth, but in her effort to like make it like assimilate, to the food styles of America, that's something that I experienced a lot. So that was my first introduction into just like understanding my own unique foundation in nutrition, like my own unique nutrition landscape. And then I also born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. So that was another very unique experience in the center, the epicenter, I would say, of like Black food geography in the South. So exposed to traditional Southern style foods most of my life, mixed in with being Nigerian. And then when I moved to Seattle when I was 15, I started going to high school there. And that was my first time being in a food geography that was stark contrast to how I grew up, like fully. And I think honestly, that was probably my first introduction into diet culture, because I did not grow up on that, at least within my own like Southern hub, Nigerian American hub. I had a hard time understanding it. A lot of my peers in my high school would like eat predominantly salads, or just very very Eurocentric style lunches and things that I wasn't used to. So I think it made me like hyper aware of how I stood out. And then also just I was the only Black woman, Black person in a lot of my classroom spaces. So I was having a hard time just like trying to understand this new environment, and then just seeing like a difference being very stark with diet culture, like my first introduction to diet culture. Unfortunately, I went through a lot of I also just, grew up having to overcome a lot of trials and tribulations in my life. And I don't think I understood how much those things were impacting me. Again, being Nigerian American, being a child of immigrants. And then also now, when I entered my undergrad, I would be like a first generation. So I was also now a first generation college student. I am the youngest and only daughter in my family. And so kind of feels like you're like the first daughter a little bit at times. And that can be a lot of pressure and expectation. I think I had to grow up really fast, very young. And so I was, and also again, just having overcome a lot of severe trauma as a child. And so I was just trying to do a lot of things, essentially trying to control a lot of things and manage what I think was like underlying anxiety. Yeah. And I think that once I got into college, I got into an Ivy League institution, and I was working multiple jobs to help with my school, and I was pre-med and again, all these other things. And so I think I just got very overwhelmed. And in my effort to like manage that anxiety, I started to hyper focus on food. And I think something that I felt I could control to fit in, assimilate in these spaces that were triggering my anxiety was like my body. And so I unfortunately went through a really hard time where I developed an eating disorder, from like my time that I've had, I think most of my life, but I don't think really manifested fully physically until I got into college. That led me into an even deeper relationship with understanding my connection to my body and then how I interact with food. I went through treatment, was really lucky and privileged to have been able to undergo intensive treatment to help me with my recovery process. And within the treatment space, I also was just seeing lack of representation from the screening process of me being diagnosed with my condition, and then also to just the treatment and the intervention in the space. Eating disorders are the number one cause of death for mental disorder. The second cause of death for mental health disorders, second only to the opioid overdose. A lot of people don't know that. And also a lot of BIPOC and queer folks are more likely to be experiencing disordered eating symptoms, but they're half as likely to be asked about it or screened by their physician. So I was just seeing a lot of inequities and invisibility, I felt like, in the space. So that kind of got me thinking even deeper about what it means to be a Black woman, what it means to be a Nigerian American, what it means to be first generation, what it means to be a child of immigrants, trying to understand the relationship with their body and with food. And trying to bring those things together. I got really interested, and once my recovery got better and I, was able to be more fully recovered, I felt comfortable actually putting myself in the nutrition space more as like an advocate, especially with movements that were celebrating body liberation. And initially, at the spaces that the organizations that I was working with on my campus in undergrad, I was really excited because I'm like, oh my God, like this is important, representation is important. And I feel much more confident in myself. And, I feel like I can really advocate and support for increasing representation and also encouraging screening and access and all kinds of stuff for other Black women who look like me, who struggle with things that I go through, but just don't have the language, the support, the access, understanding, all kinds of stuff. But even in those spaces, there was still a lack of diversity and representation. And it felt like the intentionality around how we were trying to really incorporate, bring in marginalized groups was lacking. And that got me so frustrated. And I think I was trying to think through more ways again to help with really advocating for marginalized communities who were in the space, who I know were struggling similar to how I struggled. And I thought that was going to be medicine. I came into undergrad being pre-med. I wanted to be a doctor. That changed. And then thinking through it more after going through my experiences, I think I was leaning more so into how can I think about the nutrition dietetic space as someone who can provide care, having the understandings that I have that are intersectional and nuanced. And that got me into trying to understand research and trying to think through ways that I could use my mind and my experience to help build language and disseminate information about representation and symptoms and just the uniqueness of it that a lot of communities of color, especially Black communities, don't have. So all in all, this urgency, I would say, just kind of sparked for me. And then that helped me feel more comfortable in placing myself in more nutrition kind of related spaces and partnering with organizations to help just highlight the intersectionality of it all. And also just speak to the harms that are being done by the lack thereof. And that's kind of what led me to, that's kind of what helped us facilitate most of my career journey so far.
Yeah. So
that was a long rant, but
it was, no, it wasn't a rant.
Hope that made sense.
It was your story.
Yeah.
I just want to pause and say, just thank you for sharing that, because all of that is particularly just, I know you as a friend, where that's just one, it's super awesome. Just hearing kind of how you got to where you were in nutrition. This is actually my first time hearing it. So that's so much for sharing. And I think that it's just amazing that what you're doing is essentially like, I'm trying to find the word, but essentially what you're doing is you are showing up for people who look like you in the space of nutrition, which is awesome because you were in it yourself, and you yourself was talking about how like there's a lack of you and there's a lack of people like you in those spaces. So it's really awesome that where you're at now is like, okay, well, now I'm here in this space so that when someone shows up, you know what I mean? Ooh,
absolutely. Thank you for
but that's really awesome. And I just want to acknowledge that because that's just another level of just being present and showing up for folks. And so thank you so much for sharing that and bringing just that's just awesome. That's all I want to say. It's just like, you're amazing.
Oh my God. Thank you. That's so sweet. I appreciate the affirmation. And the encouragement. I think representation and visibility is so powerful. And I think over the years, as I've like continued to understand my story, I think I've been like empowered by it.
Yeah.
And I found more strength in it and just like owning it, which can be hard, especially being in the nutrition and dietetics field, because that lack of visibility is an ongoing thing in the space. Right. So it can feel even at like, it's an ongoing, I think, internal mental battle. So I think it's so important, and it's a lot of power in owning your story and hopefully helping others feel connected to it and feel seen. That's all what I'm about in the nutrition dietetic space.
That's amazing. It's just like I wish I need to find more synonyms for amazing, but that's the word that's coming out of my spirit.
I'm receiving all the love and support.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm going to jump to, well, it's actually in connection to what you just shared, but were there any mentors or folks who had showed up for you kind of during that journey as you're kind of getting into the field of nutrition? So were there any folks who provided that guidance and support, and how did they contribute to your growth and just development as a leader and advocate in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, the whole, like within nutrition and dietetics, there's barely any representation of BIPOC folk, of Black folk, of Black women. And I think at the time that I was going through my recovery journey, like almost 5-ish years ago, I didn't see anybody. And I was trying to heal through, unlearn, relearn, learn new ways of self-discovery and understanding myself and feel empowered, but also struggling to do that because I just felt really isolated and really alone. And I don't even know how I stumbled across this person and her work, but I came across Sonia Renee Taylor's book, The Body is Not an Apology, which is written by the amazing Sonia Renee Taylor, another phenomenal Black woman, who wrote this book talking about the act of radical self-love as it relates to Blackness and fatness, and how as it relates to being big-bodied. And reading that during my recovery period was like super enriching, and I felt like it helped me reconnect with myself in ways that the traditional like treatment that I was getting wasn't really giving me. Just from her words alone, I felt like solidarity. And the way that she talks about it in the book is like surrendering to the internal war that we have within ourselves. And she talks about radical self-love as being more than like a truce or a ceasefire, but like our very existence, and just offering empathy to ourselves. And that was like so beautiful for me to read during my recovery. So that was probably the first, I would say, like mentor role model that I saw on my journey. And then as I was trying to understand ways to really amplify language and information and see if there was any research that was being done around this like problem, I came across Sabrina Springs, who wrote Fearing the Black Body. And she actually was a Berkeley alum herself. And yeah, exactly. And again, speaking to the racism, the racist foundings in nutrition and dietetics as it relates to BMI and anthropometric measurements that were created and are still being used to measure body size, but were created by elite European white Americans to inferioritize African Black features. So from our faces and our bodies. And she talks about how there's been a history and an ongoing legacy of white preference towards slimness and aversion to fatness, again, through inferiorizing Blackness. So I was like, wow, this is literally what I'm trying to say and what I have been feeling and struggling with and seeing since my move to Seattle and being introduced to diet culture, since being in college and being in an Ivy League institution where, again, very much like a minority, and then going through treatment as someone who has an eating disorder, and again, just being really invisible and not properly represented. So I just felt so seen by all of these instrumental Black women who were speaking and voicing and putting words behind the issues that I had endured and the issues that many Black people, Black women, Black adolescent girls are still struggling with. So I think those were definitely like the two role models that I saw that just affirmed the vision and the mission that I think was being created for me earlier on in my career.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes you just need that voice, so you just feel like it's not just me, there's other people who are going through this, and then actually like what I'm feeling is not because there's something wrong with me, it's because of all these outside things. But if you don't know that, then it's very valid to feel like it's like a you like individual like experience. So
absolutely,
I mean, those two women sound dope, and the fact that you found them both is like wonderful. And the way you describe both books, I'm like, hold on, let me read that. Like,
highly encourage everyone.
Self-love.
Yes,
awesome.
Absolutely.
And freeing, very freeing. The empathy part with yourself is it's always needed to be kind and loving to yourself. But I think it's another thing, like when you're reading it and like you're internally affirming that to yourself, which is fun.
For sure.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump to the next question, which is still connected. Actually, all these are connected and I'm here for it. How do you stay grounded in your community as you navigate through nutrition? So you kind of touched on it about how you've kind of had these different moments and experiences where, where you're saying you're staying connected with your community as you're moving through this. And so I guess this question is more tailored towards maybe now or recently of how have you stayed grounded as you're now working through and finishing your MPH. And also were there moments where you felt kind of challenged in that staying grounded in your community? And then how did you grow from that?
Yes. Another great question. I think once, I don't think I realized just how further isolating it would be to stay in the nutrition and dietetic world earlier on, beyond just what I was seeing from the treatment intervention space, and then like experiences trying to be in the advocacy part of nutrition. And then I had to do a lot of my own digging to find that community. So that way I wasn't feeling alone or further gaslit. I wasn't gaslighting myself or being gaslit by the predominant mainstream culture that was around me. And so I think it was probably during 2020, the heat of 2020, when a lot more voices, Black voices were being uplifted and respected, that I came across other dope, amazing BIPOC leaders who have been preaching the same things. And that has been that was extremely validating and affirming.
Hi guys, this is Tyra Parrish, your host for this episode, and we have reached the end of part 1 of this conversation with this amazing speaker. Don't click out yet because part 2 to this conversation has already been posted. So go ahead and click over to the next page, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and Spotify page.